All right, so we have a file to download for today. And what our goal for today is to get us actually using VBA to modify data in a database, to be able to insert records into a table. And by the way, once you see how to insert records, it's the same to delete records or to update records. The process is the same. It's just, you're making a statement that's a data definition statement, changing the data as it is on the database. So the context then that we're going to be working on is, imagine that you're in charge of hiring. You're hiring people, and part of what you need to do to figure out if this is someone you want to hire is you want to understand how well they work with Excel. And so you're thinking, I'm going to give these guys a workbook to work on with some challenge. Have any of you had something like that for an interview? Like they said, hey, preparation for this interview, go work on this workbook and submit it. So it looks like a few of you have had that. That's something I think is becoming more common. But you realize that there's a big difference between the person who can do this like in a really efficient way and the person who really kind of struggles and flounders and ultimately comes up with an acceptable answer. And so rather than just see the output, the final conclusion of what they've created, you'd like to be able to essentially watch the process to be able to see exactly what they do. And so to see kind of the database that we're going to be modifying, really kind of behind the scenes in Excel today, I'm going to follow this first link to this online query that's pre-configured to show these two tables. So I've got one table here called applicant and one called work log. So when I execute that, we see, here's a list of applicants that we're working with. But the interesting one is this second one, this work log table. And so what we can see is that, it looks like we've got a few applicants working here. Oh, apparently Kevin Worthen's wondering what he's going to be doing next now that he's not going to be retiring. He's going to be retiring as university president. So he's looking for a job working with Excel, apparently. And what we're seeing is that each line here is the record of one change on a cell on a workbook. So here's the logged in user. The logged in user is modifying a workbook with this name, changing something on this sheet, and they're changing that cell, they're putting in this formula, and at this time, that formula evaluates to this value. And so we've got that happening with a timestamp that's happening, down to the second. So we're keeping track of that. So that's the idea. We want to make it so that when the user changes a cell, even without them even knowing that it's going on, we are going to say, send the record of that change to the database. So that if I wanted to see just, hey, what is Kevin Worthen doing here? And say where, we can just see the applicant, where K Worthen, where username is equal to K Worthen. And what we order them by event ID. It'll be the same as event time, I think, submit. I should put them in order of time because this event ID automatically pulls the next value each time you submit. So now I can look and I can see how long the time. With a little more work on this query, I can even make a new column here that shows how much time has elapsed between these two timestamps. So I can see, oh, he did this, and then it took him 47 seconds to make the next change, and I can get a feeling for how fluent, how comfortable this person is working with Excel. You can see the missteps that happened along the way and so forth. Looks like he's doing the same thing an awful lot here. So interesting. Okay, so that's where we're headed. Questions? All right. So let's go ahead and open up the workbook for today. And I don't think there's anything that's that interesting on the workbook itself. Yeah, we've got one sheet and there's nothing on it. But we've got some code here to get us started. So here in module 1, we've got some starting codes. Let's just take a look. Some comments here that'll get us going. Here's my, okay, yeah, so here's the main one that I'm working on here. It's going to be record, edit. I'm going to pass it in two things. I'm going to pass it a worksheet that's being edited, and I'm going to pass it a cell, a reference to the cell that's being edited or to the range that's being edited. And so while I'm testing this, I'm just saying I'm going to record, I'm calling record edit, and I'm saying whatever the active sheet is and whatever the active cell is the one that I'm going to record the information about. And so working inside of this, whatever sheet gets passed in, I'll refer to as SH, whichever cell they're working on, I'll refer to as target. So some more things here, dim connection as an ADODB connection. Now, when we were bringing the data out of the database, we created two objects. One was a connection object. Do you remember what the other kind of object was? We named it RS, was abbreviation for what it was, and that was I know this was a couple of days ago. So connection is what gets us connected to the database. The other object is called a record set. Record set is what allows us to say, hey, I'm going to send you, use the connection to send a query, and that query then will bring back a set of records that I can manipulate. In this case, we need the connection to the database, but we're not pulling data down. We're just changing data that's there. And so we won't need the record set at all. Now, I got to make sure that I've got that I have this library, my ADODB connection library available. So just as a review, when I'm starting a new project, I'm sure it's already selected on this one. I'll choose Tools, References, and then I'm looking for that Microsoft, oh, maybe it's not here. Microsoft Office, yeah, I'm gonna have to go find it. So like Microsoft ActiveX Data Objects Library. I'll make sure that I've checked that library so that when I try to actually create an ADODB connection, it will know how to do that. And that's what that library does for us. Okay, and then similar, the connection string here tells us we're connecting to SQL Server. It's going to be, the server is that same Colonial Bakehouse server. The database on that server is just called VBA. And this one's a little bit different because I've put the username and the password as a part of the connection string. Last time that we connected, the username and password came in as separate arguments when on the connection open method. But you can put them in either place. So this is just a little more complicated user connection string that has the credentials in it as well. Now, what we're going to notice here is that I've got two connection strings, one for working on SQL Server. That's the one that I think is interesting because we can all bring information into a central data point and kind of see it happen. But the other one here is a connection to Microsoft Access. So this Access database, we're assuming that this database is going to be in the same location as this workbook. So we're reading the path for this workbook, and then we're saying we're after the one, we're opening up this file. So it's a different connection string because it's a different database. You have to supply different information. You say, oh, this is going to be the provider. We don't have a driver. We have a provider instead of a driver here. And that's saying, oh, we're going to work with Access. ACE is the name of the database engine that's part of Access. I forget what ACE stands for. And then only two arguments here is you got to tell it that you're going to use Access, and you've got to tell it where that Access file is. You can put a username and a password on an Access database. I think I've done that once or twice, but you can also specify, you can open that by specifying the username and password here as well. So then I've got a SQL statement. So just the same way that we had a SQL statement that was selecting data out of the database, we've got a different statement. It's not select, it's insert, that allows us to insert data into the database. In fact, let me just go ahead and take this, and I'm going to insert that just through the web interface. So insert into work log. I'm specifying all of those columns. Got some VBA stuff here. Values, Kworthen. Oh, that's why Kworthen was there all the time. I better update my recipe, update my example. S. Reese. How do you spell his name? R-E-E-S-E? Reese. So we'll have the name of the workbook. So interesting thing here is that we are supplying this as just a string, right? We are formulating a string. We're going to send that string over to Microsoft SQL Server that will then interpret that string and decide what to do with it. And if it works, it'll insert the data and tell us that it inserted the data. If it fails, it will send us a message and tell us something about why it failed. So we're saying on sheet 1, A1, putting in this information, and that's what it's evaluating to. So now I'm going to go ahead and execute that query, but I'm only going to look at the results where the user is S. Reese. I'll run those two, and we see that the first one tells us, yeah, that was okay. It sent back a message saying that was successful, and then we're seeing the results here. I'll submit again. Usually I've got 1 or 2 other students who are helping me along here. It looks like someone else because insert that one more time. And I'm getting 3 or 4 new answers. Yeah, go ahead.
If you were going to send this to the access database, would it be the same SQL?
The SQL would be exactly the same for this to go into access. And that is one of the great things about structured query language, because it is the standard default language for working with relational databases that literally you get connected onto a different database. And if the table structure is the same there, then the rest of your code will work seamlessly. Yeah, so it's a delightful thing about working with relational databases. Now, there do end up being some differences. It happens that this one would be exactly the same. One of the places that's notable is that the different database management systems tend to treat the way that you have to deal with dates a little bit differently. So sometimes you do have to modify the SQL, but largely, if it does require modifications, they're typically small modifications. Okay, so let's go ahead and see this happen from Excel. Insert into work log. So, and I think, yeah, so we're setting up a structured query language statement. Now, when we did this, when we were reading data out, what did we do? We had to use the record set.open method. We said, we're going to open this record set. We're going to pass it the SQL. It would open that record set and send back one record, but keep track of the whole set so that I could iterate across them. In this case, we're not using a record set, but there is a method of the connection object called execute. And so if I have an action query, whether it's insert, update, or delete, then I'll use this execute method, give it the structured query language statement, and then it will process it. And then I'm just closing the connection. So let me change this to myself. And I'm just going to run that and see if this works. So I'm going to run subrunner. Failed for VBA user. Uh-oh. I checked this example and thought that looked like it was probably the right password. This one works. I wonder what that password is. I wonder if I can inspect it and find it. As value, but there's no value showing there. Let me go to my console, and this is called PW. Stand by for just a moment, folks. Document, get element, IID, PW, value. Yeah, that looks like it is the same one. RESE, it's like VBA user, just spelled backwards. Is that a comment? Oh, VBA user. Oh, Gov VBA. Oh, very good. Let me go back and change that connection string again. Ah, excellent. So yeah, I just had to, I do have to update that to gov_VBA as the user. And that looks like the insert happened okay. So I should be able to come back here and now just select where the user is me. And so we see that value coming in. So we're able to execute that statement from VBA just as we were able to execute it from inside of like just that web interface. So now what this, and so in terms of actually like the mechanics of sending this statement over is really pretty simple. Once I have the statement, we'll spend some time seeing some tricks about how to properly form the statement. Then it's just, I just have to execute it and then pay attention to what comes back to know if it was successful or not. So, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off, and this is how I recommend you do the project as well. I mean, the project's kind of up to you in terms of how you want to implement it, but I'm giving you the pattern of what I think you should do for the project. So this part has to be the same, right? This part is going to be hard coded because this is, I'm not changing what table I'm inserting in. I'm always going to be inserting to the same table. I'm always inserting into the same columns. That's what this says is in this table, I'm going to insert a value into this column, this column, this column, this column, all these columns. But the part that changes is the values clause. So the values clause is going to specify what we're putting in. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this G Allen here, and I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm just going to put in, I'm going to make a tag. This is nothing specific about SQL Server or even structured query language. I'm just saying, in fact, if I run this right now, it will actually put username into that table. It's just a string, and it will plug that into the table. I think if I was trying to see that, because I've got angle brackets here, it would try to interpret that as a tag in HTML, and we wouldn't see the data, but it would be there. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say, all right, between where I define that SQL and where I execute the SQL, I need to actually get the value for the username in there. And so it seems like there's a way to ask, there's like a property of the application. So application refers to all of Excel, the whole of Excel as an object, and it has a property called username. Oh, it's actually the name of the user, not the logged in name. That's fine. That'll be fine for what I'm after here. So now here I've set up my string to be, this now parameterized statement. And now I'm going to change it. I'm going to say SQL equals something different than it used to. What's it going to equal? I'm going to replace, call the replace function, looking at SQL, looking for this tag, and replacing it with whatever the username of the currently logged in user is. So now if I run that and submit this query again, oh, I'm looking for where it's G Allen. So let me just do everything, but I'm going to sort it in reverse chronological order. So select star from work log, order by event time in descending order. So here's the one that I entered, and it looks like we've got Brittany and Savannah are also coming along with me in the example. So this idea of saying I'm going to have kind of a template of my structured query language set up, and I'm going to modify that template is a pretty clean way to do it. Another way that's really common is to say, rather than starting off with a whole statement with parameters, I'll just kind of build this as I go. So I certainly could have, like everything up to this point could be what I have in SQL, and then I could just append on to the end of it, username and so forth. But I think this ends up with much more readable code. Say I've got the template with parameters in it, and then I'm modifying those parameters one at a time. So let's just go ahead and go on the next one. So this is the name of the workbook. I'll call that WB name. WB name. And of course, that's just going to be this workbook.name. Now for sheet 1, remember that when I'm running this, I'm passing in the sheet as a variable with a variable name of sh. So this will be sheet name. I'll replace sheet name with sh.name. Show me how comfortable you are with this idea of passing the worksheet in. So, where is sh coming from? You understand how that's happening. Show me on a scale of 0 to 5 how comfortable you are with that. 5, 4, 5, 5. Okay, good. Question, yes. Well, the question is inside these tags, does it have to be all caps? And the answer is no. I can replace, whatever I put there, it's just what I have to search for to replace here. I'm putting it in all capitals and putting it inside these tags because the one danger about doing this is imagine what would happen if when we inserted something for the username, that username happened to contain, let's just say that instead of putting sheet name here in brackets and capitals like that, it was just called sheet. Right, this would work okay. Right, so if I said, look for sheet and sheet here, that would still find that, replace it with whatever the name of the sheet is. But the problem is if I've got, if I have a username that actually has the string sheet in it, like, I don't know, someone's name would actually be sheet, Sir 3 sheets to the wind is the person's name, I don't know. But if that substring sheet gets put into my query by a prior replace, then I will be replacing it not only here, but I'll be replacing it in where it got inserted before. And so the whole reason that I put these in all capitals and in angle brackets is because I want to be relatively certain that this is not coming in as a part of something that got filled in before. So maybe I'll just put a breakpoint here. I'm not sure I have to go all the way to the database with this as I'm just kind of testing this. Let's see what that SQL statement looks like. And it is a really good idea. So a little preview for the project that you're going to be working on. It's going to take you a fair amount of effort to get your first query to execute. And once you get that first query to execute and it actually goes into the database, you'll have this sense of euphoria and you will think, I'm almost done. And you're not. You're just getting started. And the reason is because you don't know what to anticipate in all of those 48 data files. And so there will be things that will happen that are like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And it's going to cause my query to fail. Maybe just getting started is too strong of language for that. Once you get that to execute, you are getting pretty close to being done, but there's still a fair amount of work to do. And so it's probably always a really healthy idea to say, hey, I want to print out my structured query language statement just immediately before I execute it. That way, when there is an error, when you're inserting, then you can see exactly the statement that executed by error, exactly the one that caused the error. To complete this project, your script, your VBA is going to have to run literally more than 5,000 queries because it's reading through all those files. It is going to be running a substantial number of queries. And when you get to St. Mary's College, it's going to be like, oh yeah, that one's different somehow, and I got to figure out how to modify my code to deal with that one. So just as a tip, keep your, while you're running this in debug or while you're developing this, always print just before you execute. All right, I don't remember what I was looking for here. Just want to see if looks like this is coming along okay. So I've got name of the worksheet, name of me. Oh, but sheet name isn't. Oh, it's because I modified it, but didn't correct it here. So change that, run that again. And looks like it's bringing the sheet name in now. Okay, excellent. So likewise, I'm passing in target as the range that we're modifying. So I think I'll call this one target. And I'm going to replace that with target.address. And it looks like case 6 must be my active cell. Let's find out. Yep, case 6 was my active cell. And so I'm keeping track of the cell that we're dealing with. And actually, the rest of these, we've got a formula and we've got a value. Let's go ahead and parameterize those. And they're going to be really similar to this one. So target's going to have a formula and have a value as well. Okay, any questions to this point? Yes.
The target.address stack where we pass variable.
So where are we getting target.address is the question. And the answer is when we're calling this, our runner that's running this for us, because when we are calling record edit, we're expecting to have a sheet and a range sent in. And so that's just the name of the range that's being sent in. You'll see why I call these SH and target here. In fact, why don't we go ahead and do that now? I'll show you why we're doing that now. I'm going to comment out the execute on this. So now if I run this, should just, oops. I run this, it should just print and not, I've gotten rid of my breakpoint and everything. You remember that when we deal with forms, user forms, there's this notion of an object receiving an event to cause code to fire. Well, we have a very complex set of objects and events that we can work with on the worksheet as well, or in this case, for the whole entire workbook. And so here's what I'm going to do. For the first time, I think, in class, I'm going to open up one of the modules that underlies the built-in objects to this workbook. Every other time we've worked with a module, it's either been a part of a user form or it's been a general module that we inserted. But these other things up here, the sheet and this workbook, they actually have modules built into them as well. I'm going to double click the workbook, this workbook node here, and it will open up the module for that workbook. And so I can see that up here at the top that I'm on this workbook code, right? I'm not on my module. Let's say, module 1 code. I am on this workbook code. And now I have here the same set of, like the same drop-down boxes that I have when I'm working in a form. And so I'm going to say, hey, when something happens to the workbook, and it is now guessed at the event. There's lots of events I can choose from here. Like, here's the event. What would happen? What would this mean? Workbook.open. What does that do? When this workbook receives the open event, like right immediately when it opens, what are we saying? Close it. Yeah, just close and don't save the changes. Open the workbook, it closes. Open the workbook, it closes. Yeah, don't do this. I don't want to, in fact, the truth is I don't want to work on open at all, but let me go here and kind of look at what some of these other ones are. So like I could make something execute when someone inserts a new sheet, or when they make a new chart, we could make code execute in response to that. I think I'm looking at one called like sheet change. Here we go, sheet change. So this one is going to execute every time a cell gets changed on any sheet. And so it's going to tell me which sheet got changed and which cell got changed. So really quickly, let me just put a debug.printf here. sh.name and the address. Okay, so every time I change, let me split my screen here. Every time I change a cell, it will fire that code. Even if I do a whole range, I'll delete this. It'll say, oh, yeah, in one step, you changed that whole range. Question?
Is there something that does the same, but checks inside the VBA code to see if they change?
So can we like have code happen in response to when someone's changing the code? I don't know, you got something devious in mind here. And the answer is, I don't think so. I'm virtually certain the answer to that is no. Sadly, whatever you want to do, sadly, not possible. Now, it turns out that you can write VBA code that will write other VBA code. So you could have some sub-procedure that's writing another sub-procedure that you could then execute. Really dangerous to let your code write code that it's going to execute. And so if you want, that's like a separate level of security you have to enable to let it just show it to you because you brought it up. Even though I guess you didn't bring it up, you brought up something different. But if I come to my developer tab under macro security, like it's right here, trust access to the VBA object model. Unless that box is checked, you can't, your VBA code can't change your VBA code, but you check that and you can write code that modifies the code that you could, I mean, it's crazy. You have a program that writes another program and then runs it while it's running itself. It lets you do some powerful things, some of which are evil. So anyway, just, okay. So, but what I'm going to do here is that now, I mean, that's the whole point. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to log what the user is doing here in this workbook. And so instead of printing this, I'm just going to come up to my tester, and I'm just going to call record edit. And you'll notice it's expecting SH and target. And I could have called those anything over here, but they were called SH and target here. I'm passing the sheet and I'm passing the cell. So now when I make a change, hi there. ITHERE, then this is calling through to record edit, and record edit then is printing out the insert statement that I'm getting ready to run. So we can see now that it is shown hi there as both the formula and the value. Sheet 1 and C4 was the cell that I was on. So, whew. I think we're getting pretty close. Any questions? I think I'm ready to uncomment out my line here and actually have these go through. So I'll make a change, put a 5 there, then I'll put a formula in that just takes 5 minus 2. I should be able to go and see those here. So yeah, there's the formula showing 5 minus 2 and the result is 3. And there's me putting the 5 in. Now, One thing that I don't particularly care for is that when there's no formula at all, just a value, and I ask for the formula of the cell, Excel responds back and says the formula is the value. Now, I shouldn't say I don't like that. I think that's the fine thing to do. But I don't think I want to be writing the formula that isn't a formula. I want that to actually be a formula if it's a formula. So I think what I'm going to say is that if the formula and the value are exactly the same, I don't want to put the formula in at all. And so let's go add that to our code. So this is going to make this a little bit more complex. So let's do this. Maybe I'll handle the formula last. Not quite sure what I've done here. Here's formula. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to say if target.value and target.formula are equal to each other. Then I want to do something. Otherwise, I want to do something else. And the otherwise is normal behavior. So if they are not equal to each other, then just put the formula into the formula, replace it with the formula tag. If they are equal to each other, I want to replace the formula tag. Well, for now, I want to replace the formula tag with nothing. I'll replace the formula tag with a zero-length string. This is a little bit problematic, but let's go ahead and see what this does, and then I'll explain to you what the problem is. Okay, so now you come back and just put a cell in. Just put in 22 and execute that. That looks like that was me. And I expected that not to do it. So what did I miss here? Oh, apparently someone's calling me with the answer. See if I can silence my phone. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. So I'll put a breakpoint here and we'll just follow it through. Put another one that has no formula. I've got here target.value is 2. Target.value is numeric 2. Target.formula is a string 2. I still would expect that to go in. Let's see. Shift F8. Yeah, it's skipping by it. Wow. That is totally unexpected for me. What it's saying is that a string 2 is not equaling a numeric 2. So you might do the test here. It tells me they're the same. And let's take a look at that. What are these actually printing out? Yeah, they both look like 2. One's a string. It's actually kind of disturbing that these are not showing equality. I would totally, as you may have guessed, I would totally expected it to do that. We'll work around this, not a problem. A double and a string. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're just going to convert them both to be strings. So we'll convert this one to a string, convert to string, and convert this one to a string. I think the last time I did this example, I checked to see if it started with an equal sign to tell if it was a formula. Yes, okay, so now that I've converted both of those expressions to string, they're showing with equality. So now that should, I'll run this the rest of the way through, that should show me, yeah, so Here's me. And so now the formula is going in blank. But here's how we say blank in the world of database. Select star from work log where formula is null. So in the world of database, the absence of a value is treated differently than you might expect. We have this keyword null, which means one of two things in the world of relational database management. It either means there is no value for this record for that, which is the case here. Right here, we're saying there's no formula. There's a value, but there's no formula. Or it means we just don't know what the value is. And this was a mistake that they made when they were making relational database management, like back in the 1970s, when IBM was first implementing this. They said, yeah, null means one of those two things. How much better it would be for us if there were two different things, like this record doesn't have a value for that, and we just don't know what the value is for that. In fact, there were some attempts pretty early on to fix that, and they just never caught on. So we kind of live with null meaning one of those two things. So when I submit this, I don't see anything in 2023 here. This is all older stuff where the formula is blank. What I actually have there is I have that formula is not missing its value. That formula has a value. I'm going to look where the formula is equal to a zero-length string. And now we're seeing the ones that have happened here in 2023. Right? Those are the ones that we've just inserted. A zero-length string and the absence of a value look a lot like each other, but they are completely different. In the world of database lingo, oh yeah, there's a string there. How many characters are in that string? None. That is different than there just isn't a value here. And so it's always dangerous to plug in a zero-length string into a database because it looks just like the absence of a value. And that's really what we want to say. We want to say there is no formula here. But that's not what we've said by putting in a zero-length string. And if you think about what a zero-length string looks like in VBA, remember there's 4 bytes of overhead. Every time I make a string variable, there's 4 bytes of overhead. The first 4 bytes tell me how long the string is. And so you can see, oh yeah, if I've got a string, I've got 4 bytes to tell me that I have 0 characters in it. It really is different than just nothing. And so what we've got to do is we've got to use the keyword null to say there's no value. I'm putting in no value here. So the first thing that you might choose to do is say, just put in the word null. Just replace formula with null. Let me clear this off and go put another constant in. Let's take a look at what that actually executed and see if you can tell me what the problem is with what I've just done. It seems like a pretty reasonable thing. What's the problem? You're smiling. Do you see what the problem is? Yeah, that null, N-U-L-L, is inside my quotes. So I actually just put in the characters N-U-L-L. We'll run this again. And not where formula, let me get off the where clause altogether. And, I'm actually putting so I'm putting the word null in there. So I've got a couple of options. One is this would be correct. This query would be correct if it just didn't have the quotes. Like it's a reserved word, just like the reserved words we have in VBA. Oof. So there's a couple ways I could do it. One is I could say, listen, when I'm building this, let's not put the quotes around formula. Let's take these quotes off. And then when we replace it, we'll add the quotes on. So when we plug the target formula, then we'll also bring the quotes in at this point. I don't care for that approach. Another approach would be to say, if it's null, if it's a special case of null, let me just take the quotes away as well. So in my replace now, I'm saying, don't just replace the tag, but also replace the quotes. I think this is a little bit cleaner. I like this better. But the truth is, either one is fine. My other approach would be to modify this even more and just say, you know what, just don't even specify, just get rid of this. and then get rid of this as well. So in other words, if I don't tell it to put a value in, it's going to end up with a null value on the record. You didn't tell me what a value here. There's no value here. If I do specify a column and I want there to be no value, then I use the keyword null. And I think that's probably the simplest way through, is this way. And this is something that students, for whatever reason, even though I go over it in class, will spend hours trying to figure out on the project. So hopefully you'll remember this, or you watch the video, and that's how you do it. There's a question here halfway up. Can't we put value null?
Like, because there's a null built in.
Oh yeah, this is another reason that it gets confusing. I like it. Let's see what happens. Let me go ahead and take these quotes off. And what you're saying is there is a keyword in VBA, null, which means the same thing it means in Oracle or in SQL Server, the absence of a value. But the problem here is that what I'm doing is I am not sending this VBA variable to SQL Server. I am making a string of characters and sending that string there. And so I don't even know what's going to happen if I try to replace null into a string. Let's try it and see what happens. I think it's probably going to be okay. And this would be equivalent to just making it into a 0-length string. Well, let's find out. Oh, no, invalid use of null. So I can't do that. Yeah, so this null issue is confounded by the fact that null means something in VBA as well. And thinking about null as a reserved word versus as a string version of itself and so forth. Okay, so I'm going back to this way right here. I think that's the way I want it. Have I actually run this yet? Let me go ahead and run this and see if it does it properly. Looks like it ran without error. Come back and look where the formula is null. Yeah, so submit that. So now I've got some in 2023 that are showing the absence of a value here. Interestingly, if I try to say where formula equals null, that is always going to be false. Because the whole point of null is that we don't know what the value is. One meaning of null is it's something, we just don't know what it is. And so null never equals anything else. In fact, like even if I said where null equals null, it's kind of a weird thing to do because you think I should be looking at a value in the table. Let me come in here first and say where 1 equals 1. The way this where clause gets processed is it says, all right, I'm looking through this table here, work log. I'm gonna look at every single row, and I'm gonna check to see if this where clause evaluates true or false for that row. If it evaluates for true for that row, it comes into the answer set. If it's false for that row, it doesn't. In this case, I've got an expression here that is always true. So every single record is gonna come in. It says it's looking at this row, does 1 equal 1? Yes. It looks at this row, does 1 equal 1? Yes. Yes, 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 yes. But if I change this to null equals null, the answer is no, it never equals itself. Because the point of null is we don't know what the value is. So how can we say it was equal to some other value that we don't know what it is? Okay, questions on null? All right. We just had St. Patrick's Day. So why don't we come in here and do something St. Patrick-y? Let's put in O'Flanagan. O'Flanagan. Oh, error. Let's take a look. Someone tell me what the problem is. The apostrophe in O'Flanagan is a problem. Here's what so by the time this gets sent over to SQL Server, it looks at this and says, okay, single quote looks fantastic. We're starting with a string. In fact, let's kind of back you up just a little bit here. It's coming along, understanding everything. It gets to this one, it goes, oh, string. Okay, string literal. Comes along, reads that's all part of the string literal. It gets to the quote and goes, end of the string. Perfect. Comma, great. I'm moving on to the next one. looks at this and goes, null. I know what that means. Absence of a value, comma, I'm going on to the next field. Single quote, great, opening of a string. First character, oh, end of the string, perfect. And it gets to that F right there and it goes, I was not expecting an F. What was I expecting? Closing parenthesis, maybe some, could have been ampersand, going to concatenate some, there's several things that could be legal here. F is not one of them. Now, if I have a string in VBA that I want to put a quote into, how do I do it? Have we talked about this? I may not have shown this to you yet. It's an important thing to know in VBA. What if I wanted to print hello there, Fred? And Fred is in quotes. Oh, that's really interesting. I'm not entirely sure why that didn't give me an error. Fred disappeared. The interpreter comes along and says, there's the string. But why it's not barking at this, I don't know. Anyway, what I need to do is I need to double them up. Seems like a weird thing. One is no good, but two makes it okay. So what the interpreter does now is it comes along and says beginning of a string, end of the string. I think, oh, wait a minute, let me peek ahead and see if the next character happens to also be a quote. And if it is, then it's not really the end of the string, it's just a quote in the string. Oh, it was, that's just a quote in the string, FRED, end of the string. Oh, wait, let me peek ahead and see if it is. The next one's a quote. Oh, it is, that's not really the end of the string, it's a quote in the string. It gets to that and goes, oh, I think this is the end of the string, but wait, let me peek ahead and see if the next character is a string, is a quote. Oh, there is no next character, so that must be it. So that's going to give me those quotes inside. The same thing has to happen for my, anytime I'm dealing with a single quote inside this single quote terminated string. So let's think about the ones of these that could have quotes in them. So could the username have a quote in it? I don't know. I'm going to do this because this code's going to get a little bit ugly. It's not terribly ugly, but let me make another sub procedure here, or rather a function called prep SQL. I'm going to pass it some text as a string. It's going to return a string. And all we're going to do is we are going to send back a version of this where I've replaced single quotes with something else. Okay, so I'm looking at text, whatever was passed in. I'm looking for a single quote character. Ooh. Single quote, I think, is character number 34. 34? Double quote, maybe it's 33. Maybe it's 35. I don't know. ASCII character, quote, 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 is 39. So I'm going to look for character number 39. And I'm going to replace it with, and I'm using character 39 here just because it's a little bit easier to see, right? I could have said single quote inside of double quotes, but that's really hard to see. So I'm going to look for every occurrence of a single quote, and I'm going to replace it with what? 2 single quotes. So now, every time that I'm thinking, there could possibly be a single quote in this, let me just, instead of just using its value, let me go ahead and pass the value through this function. So could a username have a single quote? I don't know, but you know what? I'm just going to put my function around it. Can a workbook have a single quote? It may be that it's illegal to have a workbook with a single quote, but I'm going to go ahead and change that to sheet name. I don't know. Maybe it could have a single quote. Oops, what did I do? Now, my address never going to have a single quote. I'm going to skip that one. My value can definitely have a single quote. That's the problem I ran into. And my formula can have a single quote. So now I'm just saying, listen, I want to, fix what I might be able to fix about this to make it proper. That's really the only special character I have to think about. So now it looks like that executed without error. Let's see if we got O. Henry in there. The thing to realize is that it doesn't put two quotes in, right? It recognizes that series of two quotes and it says, that's just a single quote inside the string. So if I look at my query here, we can see that it's got the two quotes in there, but those two quotes are interpreted as a single quote inside the string. Questions? I am now trying to think if there's anything else I should be teaching you to get you ready for this project. You're going to remember that a few days ago when we were dealing with the built-in dialogues, we got set up with a loop that would go through and process those files. That's probably where you should start for the project, and then look at this. And this gets you pretty far down the road on that project. Questions? Yes. And you try to delete. Oh, interesting. So you're saying that if we come over here and delete something, you get an error. Let me go see what that did. So yeah, that looks like it worked okay for me. I wonder why you would have gotten an error. Let's take a look here. I'm about to dismiss class early. So I just don't have anything else to tell you about this. What's that? Oh, it's when you do multiple cells. Yeah, okay, good. Let's fix that too. Right, because let's look at what it's actually. Let me go ahead and delete that so we can see what the error is. So I'm asking for the value of the target, and it probably just doesn't even have a value. This is a multi-cell range. Address. I can ask for the address. It's a multi-cell range. I can't just ask for the value, even though it is just a single one. So we have to do one of two things here. We have to look at this and say, oh, when there's multiple cells, boy, what we could do, not in 15 minutes, but what we could do is we could say, oh, that's multiple cells. Well, let me actually insert a record for each one of those cells. Now look at that and just say, oh, I want to convert that range and actually insert a bunch. That would be a problem if they cleared the whole worksheet, because that would be way more data than we could push around. So why don't we just do this? Why don't I say we're only really interested in single cell values. So when you change a single cell, we're going to log it. A single cell, we're going to log it. Otherwise, we're not. So I should be able to ask what target.cells.count is. Yeah, there's 5 there. So when I first come in here, let me just say this. Let me just say if target.cells.count is different from 1, then exit sub. That should correct that problem. So if you're trying to modify multiple cells, that's fine, modify the cells, but we're just not going to log it. So now if I delete all of that, it goes through without an error, but that did not get logged. Or we could say, oh yeah, it's got more than one cell. Let's go ahead and log it, but not just put the value. This is the range that you changed. And maybe we could put the value of the first cell or something. How many of you took IS 110? So the very first version, I wrote the automatic grading mechanisms that you used in that class. The first version of that automatic grader used VBA. The one you probably went through it was JavaScript. But I was actually, I built, and by the way, these functions are in the new version as well. So yeah, every time you change something in that class, we log that to the cloud, what you're changing, and they run algorithms to see if it looks like you're doing it in a way that's not really what a human would do to do it, and so forth. But when I was first writing the algorithms, there was a class at a large university south of us here that was using the book, and I was writing this to try to figure out when people were collaborating, and the algorithm kept saying that there were like hundreds of people turning in the same workbook. And I thought, there's something wrong with my algorithm. And I spent hours trying to figure out what's wrong with the algorithm. And then I finally print the names of the students that were like, my algorithm was saying were turning in the same work. And they were all from a common ethnic group. And I went, oh, they really do have like cells of people where hundreds of people are working together, turning in the same work. A great organizational feat. How could you even organize that? I don't know. So that's actually the origin of this example. All right, any questions? In case you're wondering, I don't have anything like that running on the grading stuff that we do here, in class. But, oh yeah, we're gonna believe that. All right, hey, thanks for coming. We'll call it good, and we will see you next week. Ooh. Yes. Just make sure I renamed that correctly. For winter 23. Just give me just a second to upload this. It'll take me all of 15 seconds. Time me. How long was it?
I was.
You weren't really.
But it's because I don't. Thank you so much.
Like started that. It's funny. So you're not like.
And starting to work what? Do you want to do something database? Hey,